At my family's summer party, my father's brother told me, "The world is too big for little girls like you." I smiled and played along. 100 years later, when his great-grandchildren attended lectures about the builders of nations, they wrote essays on my contributions without realizing they were kneeling at the feet of the girl their ancestor once belittled. I was 9 years old the summer my whole future changed. It happened during one of those long, sticky July afternoons in 1945, at my grandparents' farm just outside Bloomington, Indiana. Every summer we'd have this big family gathering. It wasn't fancy, we didn't have money for that, but it was something everyone looked forward to. My dad had 4 brothers, and they'd all come with their wives and kids. The adults would drink, smoke, and tell war stories. The women would sweat over pies and lemonade. Us kids ran wild until we collapsed into folding chairs with red Kool-Aid mustaches and scraped knees. I'd always been the odd one. I didn't like dolls. I didn't care about playing house. I cared about ideas. I loved books, especially ones with maps, diagrams, or anything that explained how things worked. My favorite was this old geography book I found at a yard sale. I carried it everywhere that summer like other girls carried their stuffed animals. That afternoon, I was sitting alone on the front porch, tracing my finger along the Nile River on one of the maps. I remember that map was faded and torn at the corners, but I didn't care. I was so lost in it, I didn't even notice Uncle Ray standing behind me until he spoke. "You like maps, kid?" he said. I turned around. He was standing there with a beer in one hand, and a cigarette dangling from his lip, watching me like I was some kind of curiosity. Uncle Ray had that way about him, like nothing impressed him, not even people. "I do," I said. "I'm learning the river systems in Africa." He squinted at the page, then let out this short, cold laugh. "The world's a big place," he said, like he was telling me something important. Then he leaned in closer, looked me right in the face and said, "Too big for little girls like you." And then he walked off just like that.
No smile. No wink.
Nothing. I sat there frozen. It was like someone had slapped me and smiled after. My stomach turned, not because I thought he was right, but because I knew he believed it. I knew all of them believed it in one way or another. The uncles, even some of the aunts, maybe even my dad. That night I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed with my geography book under my pillow, staring at the ceiling. I thought about what he said over and over. "Too big for little girls like you." First it made me angry, then it made me determined. I decided something that night. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't cry to my mother. I didn't scream into the night. I just made a quiet promise to myself. If the world was too big, I'd learn how to shape it. And I did. Took decades. Painful decades. I had to fight for every inch. Through classrooms that ignored me. Professors who laughed behind my back. Jobs that paid me less for doing more. Boardrooms where men talked over me. Banks that denied me. Partners who betrayed me. But I kept going. I studied harder. Worked longer. Failed, then started over. And when I finally made it, I didn't just break through the glass ceiling. I built the damn building from the ground up. And the best part, 78 years after that summer, my great-niece Uncle Ray's great-granddaughter sat in a classroom at the University of Chicago and wrote an essay for her American infrastructure class. It was about me. She had no idea. She quoted my work, described the bridges I designed, the flood systems I planned, the urban layouts I pioneered. She even mentioned the lecture series held in my name. I saw it because her professor, an old friend, sent me a copy, chuckling as he did. He said, "I think you've come full circle." I read that essay 3 times, and I laughed. Not cruelly, just quietly. Because somewhere out there, Uncle Ray's bloodline was kneeling at the feet of the girl he once told the world was too big for her. He died before he ever saw what I became. That's okay. His ghost lives long enough through his descendants. And they live in my world now. After I read that essay, something changed in me. I'd spent most of my life moving forward. Always forward. I didn't dwell on the past. I didn't go to family reunions. I didn't look back at the Indiana farm, or wonder what happened to everyone else. I'd buried it all beneath steel, concrete, and blueprints. But now it was rising again. Not just the memory of Uncle Ray and his words, but the whole picture. My family. The silence that followed me when I left. The way they never called. Never asked where I'd gone or what I'd done. No one from home came to my graduation from Purdue. No one sent flowers when I opened my first architecture firm. I was their quiet embarrassment. The girl who got too big for her britches. I Googled them. I found my cousins Ray's sons and grandsons. One of them owned a construction company in Terre Haute. Another had run for city council and lost. Most of them lived ordinary lives. Safe ones. Small ones. But one name stood out. Ryan Callahan. That was Ray's great-grandson. The same one whose daughter wrote that essay. He ran a firm called Callahan Structural, and his name had started showing up in circles I moved in. Quietly. Sloppily. Then I saw he'd been awarded a bid for a government project in Ohio. A bridge project. One I'd reviewed a few years earlier when it was in early stages. I remembered that proposal. It was mine. My firm had designed the specs. We'd submitted them to the state, but lost out in the second round. Now Callahan Structural was building my bridge. And I knew something wasn't right. I dug in. I called old contacts. Pulled archived emails. Got access to a copy of Callahan's proposal through a friend in Public Works. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was a nearly exact copy of our design. Almost down to the measurements. The wording in the risk assessment was lifted straight from our internal drafts. Someone had leaked our plans. Or stolen them. I flew to Columbus the next morning. I didn't tell my firm. I didn't tell anyone. I went alone and walked the site wearing a hard hat and vest like I belonged there. I saw the flaws instantly. The shortcuts. The cracks in the foundation, not literal yet, but I could see them forming in the structure's future like ghost bruises. I took photos. Notes. Confirmed what I already knew. Callahan hadn't just stolen my design. He'd butchered it. I left the construction site shaking. Not just with anger but something colder. Something sharper. Betrayal. Not the kind that comes from enemies. The kind that runs in your blood. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in a motel off I-71, looking through old project files, old emails, anything that could tell me how Callahan got our designs. And then I found it. 6 months before our bid was submitted, my firm hired a new junior architect. Fresh out of grad school. Smart kid. Too eager. His name was Jason Bell. I remembered him now, always watching, always asking questions about the Ohio project. He didn't last long. Left after 4 months. Said he got a better offer. Guess who he's working for now? Callahan Structural. I had proof. Dates. Email logs. Drafts he accessed. The pieces fit too perfectly. He was a plant. I called my lawyer. A woman named Talia who doesn't flinch. She went quiet after I explained everything. Then she said, "This isn't just intellectual theft. It's fraud. And if they built that bridge wrong, it's a public safety threat." I asked her what we could do. She said, "We sue. We go public. And we destroy them." But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Because I wanted something more than money or legal revenge. I wanted the truth. I wanted the family to see it. I wanted Ray's descendants to sit in the same burning shame he made me feel when I was 9. I wanted them to know they hadn't just stolen from someone, they'd stolen from me. So I called in a favor from a local news anchor I mentored years ago. I told her everything on record, on background with documents and recordings. She dug deeper. Found that Callahan Structural had a history of using former employees from other firms. Found multiple suspicious overlaps in designs across 3 other states. The story aired 2 weeks later. Primetime. Investigative segment. Legacy or theft. The bridge built on stolen blueprints. They didn't use my name until the end. When they did, my photo flashed across the screen, the one taken during a university lecture a few years back. Me standing in front of a blueprint taller than I am. My full title. My lifetime achievements. Then the camera cut to a still of Ryan Callahan, looking cornered. 2 days later my phone rang. It was my father's youngest brother. Uncle Walt. I hadn't heard from him in over 30 years. He said, "I saw the story." I said nothing. He said, quieter, "You were always the smartest of us." I let that hang in the air. Then he said, "Ray would have hated this." And I smiled. 'Cause I knew he was right. The lawsuit was already in motion by then. Talia moved fast. Callahan Structural was served within a week. But that wasn't the only fallout. 2 state senators started asking questions about how the bidding process was handled. One of them had approved the funds. The other had personal ties to Ryan Callahan's father who, it turns out, still had connections from his own days in public infrastructure. This wasn't just design theft. It was corruption. And now the whole house was shaking. Ryan Callahan tried to play it cool at first. He denied everything, called the allegations ridiculous, said it was just a coincidence. But then the whistleblower came forward. Jason Bell. He contacted my lawyer directly, said he wanted to make it right. I didn't believe that for a second. He probably saw which way the wind was blowing. But I didn't care why he flipped. He gave us everything. Emails, text messages, copies of project drafts he took from our servers. Proof that Ryan had recruited him before Jason even finished grad school. Proof they planned the theft from day one. And the worst part, Jason said Ryan knew who I was. He knew I was part of the family. That's why he picked our firm. It wasn't random. He wanted to beat me. He wanted to do what his great-grandfather couldn't. Put the little girl back in her place. Jason even showed us a message Ryan sent him the night after they won the bid. Old blood. Old debts. We're taking the torch now. Old debts. That's what this was. Not just greed. Not just theft. This was revenge. But he made one mistake. He started a fire without knowing I owned the matches. By the end of that month, the news had gone national. Bridges are boring until they collapse or get caught up in scandal. This one had all the drama they needed: family ties, fraud, lawsuits, legacy. Ryan Callahan was now the face of everything people hate about backdoor deals and stolen credit. He issued a statement. Weak. Scripted. His voice cracked on live TV. His company's board started stepping down. Investors pulled out. One of the subcontractors sued him separately for breach of ethics. And then, like a final twist of the knife, his daughter was dropped from her scholarship program. I didn't ask for that. But it happened. I got a letter from her a few days later. A handwritten letter. She said, I didn't know what he did. I didn't know who you were. But I wrote about you because I admired what you built. I still do. She said she hoped I didn't hate her. I sat with that letter for an hour. Then I placed it in a box with my childhood geography book. Because some things, no matter how much they burn, deserve to be kept. The lawsuit dragged into its second year. Ryan Callahan fought it with everything he had: money, lawyers, media spin. He even tried to play the victim. Claimed he was being targeted for a family grudge. Claimed I was the one using power to settle old scores. He wasn't wrong. But the thing is, I didn't start this. He lit the fuse when he came for me, when he came for my work, with the same arrogance his great-grandfather carried into that farmhouse porch all those years ago. The courts ruled in our favor. Callahan Structural was fined over $14 million. Their bridge project was shut down mid-construction. The state canceled the contract and launched a full investigation into how the bid was awarded. Ryan lost his licenses. Every last one. And then the worst came. One of the bridge's unfinished support beams collapsed on site. Nobody died, but a worker broke both legs. That was enough to trigger a second wave of lawsuits. OSHA came down hard. State inspectors pulled permits from every Callahan project across 3 states. The firm folded within 6 months. But I wasn't done. Because there was still one person left who hadn't answered for what happened. Me. I flew back to Indiana for the first time in 40 years. The farmhouse was gone, sold off in the 80s and bulldozed when the highway expanded. But the land was still there. The trees. The fields. The ghosts. I stood at the edge of where the porch used to be. The same porch where Ray had leaned down and said those words to me. Too big for little girls like you. I whispered them out loud. Then I said, not big enough, Ray. Not nearly big enough. I turned and walked away. I didn't need to prove anything to him. He was dead. But his words weren't. They had lived in me, shaped me, haunted me. And in chasing revenge, I'd become someone both feared and respected. I'd built legacies. I'd destroyed lives. I'd made the world kneel. But it had cost me. I never married. I had no children. My name would die with me, carried only in textbooks, on plaques, in lectures. I would live on in memory but not in blood. Ryan's daughter had her scholarship reinstated, eventually. I pulled some strings behind the scenes. I didn't want her to suffer forever for his sins. She wrote me again. I didn't answer this time, but I read it. And I smiled. The world is big, but some girls make it smaller. And some men like Ray never realize how little they really are, even as they rot under the ground they thought they owned.